Dynasty League players, on this video, we're going to break down a brand new Dynasty League Startup Superflex style that just took place among RosterWatch Nation. Loyal subscribers of RosterWatch Nation formed a brand new Dynasty Startup League with experienced players. Click the video description below to see the entire draft board. But on this video, we're going to break down the draft results, strategy, and some observations from this new league. There are meaningful and actionable takeaways to be harvested when you look at a brand new Dynasty Startup draft. I'm Seslowsky, and thanks for tuning back into RosterWatch. First, let's talk about the format of this draft. It was a 12-team tiered PPR, and what that means is the running backs got a half a point for PPR, the wide receivers a full point PPR, and the tight ends 1.5 points for PPR. That is becoming a popular way to divvy up the PPR points. With the tight end position, you are required to start 2 tight ends, and again, it's 1.5 points for the tight end receptions. Starting positions overall were 1 quarterback, 3 wide receiver, 2 tight end, 2 flex, 1 super flex, and 18 bench spots. An absolutely deep league. We'll start with some top-line observations from this draft. 9 of the first 12 players taken in the first round were quarterbacks. 3 running backs were taken also in the first round. Aging peak production veterans, age 28 and above, fall down the board. The DeAndre Hopkins type of players that are perceived as old but are still going to produce at a very high level for your fantasy team. Wide receiver 1 production is available in rounds 3 through 5, as you'll see when you click the video description below to see the whole draft board. Amazingly, rookie Kyle Pitts was the first tight end taken in this draft. Tight ends get pushed significantly above ADP at every turn in this draft, since there is start 2 tight ends. Depth players are always undervalued in a deep format. People like the stars, they forget about the depth options. In leagues that require deep starting roster positions, including 2 quarterbacks, it's important to have a sound, flexible strategy entering the draft. Experienced fantasy gamers are able to pivot off that strategy as the market evolves within that particular draft. RosterWatch Nation asked a few of the members, what was your strategy coming into the draft? The overwhelming theme from some of the participants were that they wanted to let value fall to them, not reach for any particular position. Other players were comfortable being weaker at tight end to booster up their quarterback and running back position. There's a wide range of strategies that can be applied when doing a dynasty startup. There's many paths. The more starting positions you have, the more paths there are to build the dynasty roster. Breaking down some of the picks. Again, you can follow along just by looking at the draft board during this video. The best pick of the early rounds was by Team Clipboard Jesus, RosterWatch Pro member. He took Nick Chubb at pick 3.8. Represents the 8th running back off the board. Nick Chubb is in the conversation for the best pure runner in the NFL. He falls out of the top 5 running backs mostly due to the presence of Kareem Hunt. The perception is that Hunt caps Chubb's pass-catching upside. In this format, where running backs are only getting a half-point PPR, Chubb becomes a value outside of the top 15 overall picks. The riskiest pick in the top 3 rounds was made by Team Chief SD. He took Trey Lance at pick 2.11, QB 10 off the board. Trey Lance's upside is easy to see. The 49ers paid a hefty price to move up to get him. Lance is a late second-round worthy gamble, but one filled with uncertainty. Quarterbacks that were drafted shortly after Lance were Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, Matthew Stafford, and Jalen Hurts. The best value pick of the first few rounds was made by RosterWatch Pro member Brandon Adam. He took Calvin Ridley at 3.9. That represents wide receiver 8. The RosterWatch Dynasty Startup ranking slot Ridley as the wide receiver 5. Drafting below ADP represents one of the best values of the entire top 3 rounds. Ridley fared well with or without Julio in 2020. There's no reason why he can't continue to build on that amazing 2020 season and be the wide receiver 1 overall should Julio leave the team. When you're in the heat of a dynasty draft, it's reacting to what the room does that really can form the rest of your draft and how it fares out with your roster build. Sharp fantasy players understand how to react when the market of the draft room changes. Being able to spot runs or tier breaks helps form fantasy players' in-game strategy. RosterWatch asked some of the participants, what surprised you most during this draft? The high volume of draft pick trading was a popular response. Focusing on other teams' roster builds will help you in order to gauge properly what the positional scarcity actually is. Another response that we had was the inflated QB market. The thirst for secure QBs with murky multi-year outlooks caused running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends to fall down the board. Another interesting observation from one of the participants was that a lot of the teams were trading out of the first 3 rounds in order to secure more depth. There's 2 ways to go about a dynasty startup draft. You could trade up to try to secure more elite players, or trade down to try to acquire more assets. There is no right or wrong way to do it, but you do want to be cautious in deeper leagues, not to deplete all of your depth. Okay, RosterWatch Nation, those are some of the observations from the early rounds of this Dynasty Startup Draft. Look for part 2 of the RosterWatch Dynasty Superflex Startup Draft Summary on the RosterWatch ticker on rosterwatch.com. We'll break down all the middle and the late round strategies. Until next time, goodbye.